Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.Buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast today from Sydney in Australia, same time zone as me, which is quite unusual for the podcast, Richard Phu, who's a business freedom designer, helping business owners to redesign their business to work without them using automation, systems, and virtual assistants. Welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast, Richard. It's a great privilege to have you as my guest.
Oh, thank you, Jurgen, man. And I'm glad too, man, because other podcasts, you've got to get up at early hours or stay up at horrendous hours where we won't have this awesome, daylight, lighting in that end. So thanks for having me on, mate.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to digging into all things sort of freedom and automation and how to remove the business owner from the business with you.
Hmm.
Lots to talk about there. But before we get on to all of that, what's the impact you're making in the world today, Richard?
Oh, the impact I'm making, Jurgen, is look, the thing I hope that I am making, right, is that we're helping our business owners out there, the small business owners who are working with their virtual teams here with us, and really just giving them that time of freedom back is what I want to create here, right? And that's what we want to help out with them. But on top of that, that's why I love the virtual space so much and the virtual assistant spaces, because we're also creating opportunities for those who aren't entrepreneurs, who are business owners at heart, to create freedom for themselves as well, because all of our team gets to work from home, right? Every single virtual assistant works from home. There's no office we have in the Philippines or anything like that. And it's just creating that freedom and the options for people, right, to live and work the way that they want on that end. And that's the impact I want to leave on this earth.
Excellent. I love it. The I read something somewhere recently that talked about freedom as the new currency, and it was an interesting take on this whole concept of work hard, achieve success, and so on. And it kind of reframed the whole thing in creating free time to experience the things that really bring us joy is
Mm.
what it all should be about today.
Mm.
And I thought that was a fascinating take. So it's really great that your mission is to help people to kind of do that in a
Yeah,
greater way.
and I think it's so true because you see it now more than ever. And then we had COVID kick in, more people realizing is when they don't have to go to the office that, hey, I got all this free time, right? That normally I would have to be in commuting, right?
Mm,
I'd have to get up, get ready, go work, and all that stuff is what can I do with this time now? And that's changed a lot of people's perspective of how they want to live life nowadays, right? And it's driven more into even the whole, the digital nomad type of thing too, right?
mm,
Where then that's what people want to do now, and that's what we see. And if we don't accommodate for that, then it's very hard to keep people, right? Because then we're not appealing to now probably one of the key core needs of a lot of people, right, is that flexibility is, it's not probably not even freedom, just actually flexibility. I think is the real currency that people are chasing. Is like, I just want to be able to have that flexibility to work from home or work on the days that I want or work at the times that I want, and I still deliver what I'm expected. And I think that's what more people are chasing. More so, we disguise it as freedom, but it's actually for most people, they just want that flexibility
mm.
in this.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I know I've worked really hard personally to give myself that flexibility. I really enjoy the work I'm doing, so it's not about freeing myself from work, but it's about having the flexibility to say, well, this morning it was dark and cold, so I won't go on my bike ride first thing in the morning. I'll go at 10 o'clock when the sun's shining and it's a little warmer. Having the freedom to kind of do that, to rearrange the day based on the weather pattern and what I want to do outside, as one example. Or you brought up the example of the digital nomad, people wanting to travel and experiencing life in different parts of the world and being able to do that while still running their business, rather than, oh, I've got to postpone this until I've saved up enough money to take 4 weeks vacation and go travel to that country.
Don't worry, Jürgen. That happened to me this morning, right? As well. I'm like, oh, I want to go for a ride, but I'm like, oh man, it's like 7 degrees out there, right? Even though my fiance bought me these winter gloves and stuff like that too, I'm like, oh, it's too cold, right? And so I probably end up going just like you, man, for a bike ride right after this too.
Hey, 7 degrees is quite good. I'll go at 7 degrees. It's the 3 degrees feels like -1 when the wind's coming off the south.
Mm.
Is the tough ones.
Oh, nasty.
And yeah. Anyway, one of the things you work with your clients on is essentially building a business that runs itself. So what are some of the key steps if we take this mindset of how can I build a business that actually runs itself so that I can go and do the bike ride at 10 in the morning or 11 in the morning? How do we go about that? What are some of the key steps?
Yeah, look, like it's not massive rocket science or anything like that, right, Jürgen? It's really, at an essence, what we try and focus on. If depends on the size of your business, where you're at in the journey too, right? So if you're in a like startup phase, you made some sales, you're generating some good traffic and good sales, and then you kind of hit a point, right, where if it's like your professional services, right? So it could be like coach, lawyer, whatever it is, you end up realizing you hit a cap of how many hours you can work to produce something. And typically we find that it's typically around like I reckon like the $120,000 mark a year, right? Where you're working by yourself, you're going out, you're doing the sales, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the whole delivery piece too. But it's kind of like this, right? It's just peaks and troughs. You start winning a lot of work, yeah, and then you got to deliver all this work, then the sales pipeline
Do
goes
the
down because you're not
marketing
going out,
sales, yeah.
right? And it's in those moments where you feel like you just keep hitting that same ceiling, right? Because you're just trapped delivering. And so usually one of the first things we want to look into is first getting your administrative side, your delivery work. The idea for you to scale is, if you're by yourself right now, is to get yourself out of delivery, right? Most people, like, some people say, I just want to be a coach, right? I just want to talk to people and that'd be great for me. And I'm like, that's fine. However, it's going to be very hard to find a salesperson to sell, who wants to drive to sell you, and you've proven that you can go out and sell and market for yourself, right? And you should continue doing that, because what we could do is look at, let's say you're coaching, right? It's about transforming parts of your pipeline in terms of the delivery side to be like, why do you need to do the client onboarding? Why do you need to go chase the invoicing? Why do you need to be the one that has to go send out these worksheets, to go check if they haven't done it, to follow it up and all that? You can have an assistant to go assist with that, or you automate processes from that, right? Like if they pay the first payment, bang, send the email, send this template, create the Google folder, here's the access to whatever else you give them, right? All that can be automated as well. So you don't need to have to go do those things manually every time you onboard someone, And so what I'm thinking about is, you want to try and systemize your delivery process so that you can step away from delivery. So first person you probably hire is, a virtual assistant, right? Low budget, and keep the costs tight, and get them to support you in the administrative side, whether that could be helping you out with the social media marketing, right? Doing organic content stuff, whether that is looking after emails, looking after client onboarding, looking after, arrears, or, finance, invoicing, that type of stuff. You want to focus on that, so that then it frees you up from having to do all of that to then go to the front of the funnel, right? And go generate more content, go generate more leads, go talk to more leads, go close more. And then as you get further down the track, it's thinking about what other parts in the delivery model are required where you need to be there. And if you're not, let's get someone else in there, right? So maybe your coaching model, right? You need to change it from, you increase the prices from, if it's one-on-one coaching, but you start finding you got no space, right, to do more one-on-ones, maybe you need to open up a group program, right? And then to manage that group, your VA, or that, you could call it like, community manager you hire, or whoever it is, manages the group, and then you just jump on, do the 1-2 hours a week of coaching, right? Answer questions, right? And then you bounce off. but then your team helps engage with them, follow up with the worksheets, follow up with the homework, get the submissions in, put it to you. You spend an hour reviewing the submissions, give it back. And that's kind of like what you want to think about. How do you get yourself out of delivery more on that end? And then that allows you to grow the marketing, grow the sales. And that's the real lifeline of your whole business, and how to scale from a business that just runs on you. So I lay out that it's not the foundation of, hey, now I'm free. It's not like that,
Yeah.
right? Eventually, let's say, you're in that space. You're like, hey, I got a good delivery team right in place, but now I'm doing sales and marketing and I'm trying to hire a marketing manager and all of that stuff, right? It's a great place to be in. And so what you want to start doing is start hiring one or two people into those front end positions, right? So like, hiring a salesperson to take your calls, right? Instead of having you to call a close on the calls, have a marketing manager and a marketing social media assistant or something like that, or a copywriter, right? On that end. And then what you want to get to is when you get to that size, you're talking about then looking at creating an executive team. Yeah, and this is where some people are. There are like 10 people or 15 people, but they don't have an executive team. They just have like a head of operations, a head of marketing, but those people are still in a, I guess, execution, mindset, task mindset, but they're not setting up a weekly council meeting. So we here at OA have a weekly council where it's me and like I think 3 other people plus Lynn, right? The founder Outsourcing Angel, and we run this meeting every week to go through the numbers, the KPIs, right? So it's important to then have KPIs, good reporting, and then it's not enough to just look at numbers. It's like I tell one of our clients recently, he's like, "Hey, Richard, we have KPIs and stuff like that, but my people are still just not doing stuff, right? Like nothing's happening, nothing's moving the needle." And I go, "Is it because you don't have KPIs?" And he showed me his KPIs. They're better than ours, right? I'm like, I should copy that, right? But then I said, "So what happens when this number's red?" Right? We have a target, and then you have bands of like, if green if we're on target, yellow if we're not, slightly off, and then red is like we're a bit far off. I go, what happens if that number's red? And he goes, no, we just look at it. And then I said, the next part is you got to educate and train up your executive team. This is what I've had to do in our team too. Is hey guys, this is red. What are we doing to get this up to yellow? What are we doing to go from yellow to green? And it's a hard question to ask because, especially for people who don't like conflict, it's a very direct question of what are we going to do, right? And it'll put the other person in an uncomfortable situation, But then that's the only way we can define if this person is at an executive level, we'll call it, is because like Jürgen, if I go, hey, how come sales is in red? What are you going to do? And then you'd be like, Richard, we're just going to try harder this week, right? And then I'm like, what? What the hell's try harder? I need versus if I go, hey, Jürgen, how come this is red? What are you going to do? You'd be like, look, Richard, this week we looked at it. We suspect it might be this. So we're going to try this, And you can see the difference there, right? Of one person taking a more of a proactive approach of like, we suspect we're trying to eliminate, what the issues might be, and then try to deploy things in the next week or the next month or whatever it is to see if that is the real problem or not. And that's what I care about more in terms of when I'm leading these teams is I don't look, I say results matter, but progress is more important, meaning I want you to be on the right trajectory, right? You might not get the result right now, but I think the progress, if as long as we're getting closer to it, is more important, and eventually we get the result, right? That
Yeah,
so
there's a lot to unpack there. The I love your last comment there with the results. I want to come back to that one there.
yeah,
The idea of seeing where you're tracking and looking at what actions are we taking to implement, and even if the results in the green, what are we doing to sustain that, or what are we doing to maybe revise the goal because we're doing so well. What I wanted to come back on, because this really piqued my interest when you're explaining this idea of like a coach can only take on so many one-on-one clients. And then that transition to, okay, as a coach, I'll do a group program because now I can take on, instead of say 10 clients, each of whom I meet one-on-one during the week, and I've got preparation. Now I can take on 100 clients
Mm,
because we'll do this group coaching program and so on. And then the
mm,
idea of a community manager who actually manages the community and does a lot of the standard kind of stuff like follow up and have you done, or what are you having difficulty with? Are there any resources that you need, because that person knows here's these resources, there's those resources, so I can just point you in the right direction. You don't need the business owner, the chief coach, to do that, and the chief coach can come on for that 20 hours if they're still going to do the same thing,
mm,
contact time, and now all
mhm.
of a sudden they've got um, a much greater revenue because of that coaching program. If somebody's wanting to make that transition, what are some of the things that they should be looking at to put into place as the fundamentals? Get these into place, small steps to progress towards that.
Good question. So when I was a coach, right, and running my own coaching business, one of the things I would always do first is you want to validate, right, your system or your method and get results. And so that's why it's important to start as one to one, right?
Hmm.
Like, and then you realize once you get to, I don't know what your capacity might be, right? Could be 10 one-on-ones, right? And then let's say the 11th one wants to come on, right? And you're just like, I ain't got time, And so then what I always say just is we want just test it out, right? Because how you do it one on one can be deployed in a one to many situation. There, you just need some minor tweaks on how to deliver it, right?
Hmm.
And so it's testing it out in the market. So I'm not going to say you should start with one to many because yes, it sounds great,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
just like sounds great to create an online course and then people just buy and just I didn't need to
Hmm.
do anything, right? But it's kind of like test it out by going do the one-to-one till you've almost maxed out and go look, now I got to create a waiting list, right, for these one-on-ones. And then if people are like no, I can't wait that long, right, and then it's like look, then the only other way we can work together is I'm going to put together like a beta testing group, which is now I'm going to open up some group coaching side of things, right? And then you open it up and go, would you like to join at a lower rate first?
Hmm.
And then see if you get 1, 2, 3, 4, then cool. If we get 5, then we can get started, right? Or something like that. Or you do it the one to many, you still offer it as the one-on-one coaches have one-on-one time with you, right? And then you invite those one-on-ones also into the group
Hmm.
because it's just like a product ladder, where one to one is the very top, and that's where you can then charge more. But then they get access to the one to many as well,
Hmm.
so they can sit in if they want. So then, you don't actually have to wait till there's I have 5 people who are okay with the group coaching thing. Now there's like, what if you had that 10, and let's say 5 of them rock up on the group coaching thing because you don't pay extra, you just get access to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And then these 4 other people are now like the group, right, in the group.
Hmm.
So then you have 9 people in the group, so it's not like you're starting completely from scratch
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I
you
love
know
that idea,
yeah,
because it doesn't cost you any more, right, to
exactly.
invite the
Yeah,
premium clients into the group. Then.
yeah, and
Hmm.
it's just extra value for them if they have that capacity for it,
Hmm.
right? And then from there, what you want to do is apply the same model, but then it's like, just test it out. Really, it's hard for me to say you got to have the
Yeah.
processes laid out and all that. It's great. I like to have that in place. In saying that, you have a rough process because you've done one to one many times.
Hmm.
Yeah, apply similar things at the one to many and then learn and then tweak along the way. Because usually I say this, try not to build a process if you've never done it before. It's kind of like going,
Hmm.
hey, we're going to go to this thick jungle and then we're going to lay down this 4-lane highway, right? On that end. And it's like, how do we know people want to walk from this end of the jungle to wherever we want to build it? Right. And so what I say is think of it as just start hacking down through the jungle first and then lay down that dirt path. You know,
Hmm.
and if we see the real dirt path, then we can upgrade it to a proper hiking trail, right? With stones and all of that down there. And then after that, we're like, oh, look, people like Jurgen run through here with bikes, right? And so then it's like, let's lay down, the concrete, right? Or the tarmac side of things, So I always think of building systems in that way because otherwise you can spend all your time
Hmm.
like building perfect course, the perfect systems, and then no one goes through it, and that's just disappointing more than anything on that end there.
Yeah, that's really great advice, and also, I mean, one of the things that I've always found, people are generally resistant to following documented processes, and if they're documented in a way that it's not actually what people what's needed by the marketplace, or it's not actually how people work or any of that, then the resistance is going to be so much higher. Whereas if you kind of test it out first and then document what you have done, what's worked, and adapt it from there, and also get the people involved who are going to actually be hands-on doing that particular task or work, then I think it can be much more successful and a much more robust process.
Yeah, you just beta test it. You name it a beta testing program. You do it
Mm.
for however long you want, right? We beta tested, one of our programs for like almost a year,
Yeah.
right? And then just getting feedback and seeing how we do things and then tweaking it on that end. And so it's just if you can get paid people who want to pay at a lower amount, right, to just beta test, then that's enough, right, to go there. I wouldn't say go with the free version first, because
Mm.
you get people who do it for free. Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. Anyone would say yes to
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
things that are free. Yeah, but in that way, it's like there's no point for you, because you don't know if they want to pay for it,
Mm.
right? And so
That's
the
right.
idea
Yeah.
is, the biggest barrier is, let's see if people want to pay for this. That helps validate a real idea versus, hey, just give me your feedback, Jurgen. I got this free course, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's good, Richard, right? But then, like, if I offered it at $50, would you pay? And you because you did it for free, you're probably like, yeah, it's probably worth that much, but
Mm.
it's not the same kind of as like asking at the start. So then to see if that person really feels like that's a big pain point to pay for
Mm.
that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a key point, isn't it? And you talk about beta test and testing the program and what works and so on, and that's the first thing really to test, to validate. Does this have enough value that my target audience is prepared to pay some money for it? Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. One of the other things I've heard you talk about, and I'm sort of switching gears a little bit here, but I think it's related to this idea of generating more freedom and flexibility for us. You talk about time stealing productivity, and that fascinated me. That idea. You say spend 2 hours today to steal 20 tomorrow. So tell us a little bit more about what do you mean by time stealing productivity?
That was a mad clickbait baity like title back then. I think I wrote that like a good 4 or 5 years ago, right? That was an article that I think Founder engaged me, and they're like, "Hey, can you write something about this?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's like this," and then it's like, "Can we use this title?" And like, "Sure," right? And so the term time stealing is more like this. It's about spending the time today, right, to capture that time back in the future, in the
Mm,
long term, and it's really about like creating the right systems, processes, whether it is even automations, right, or coaching your team. So one of the things, like literally just yesterday, right, on like Slant, and my team member who's relatively new came in probably like, oops, sorry about that, right? Came in probably about 2 months ago. Yeah. So he's in training with us, and he's about to go on a client call, and it's probably about an hour long. And I'm like, he's like, you don't need to go on this client call, Richard. And he's just new going on to
mm,
client calls. I'm like, I could, I probably got stuff to do. And I'm like, let's just sit in, right? I can sit in and observe, do some other stuff, and half listen. And then, the call went on for like probably an hour and a half with the client. And then we debriefed for a half hour afterwards. And for me, Jürgen, like, you think about it, that's like 2 hours, yeah.
mm,
And when we debriefing, I'm making specific feedback points for him, right? On like, because he's presenting, and then I'm like, okay, so some things you need to improve on, right? I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, you were great. I'm very specific, right? And this is the thing with me is like, even with, sorry, this, I think this internet provider is trying to call me, right? Because I'm like trying to switch providers. But yeah, so in regards to what we're trying to do here is, I make this time, I made this very conscious decision to be like, for my team, if I can educate them and coach them and help them think and understand how to become a better person to deliver the work, that will save me not just 2 hours in the future. It's going to save me like right, right. It will save me like 30 hours down the line, right? It's going to save me like a lot of time in the end. I just want to switch this, right? I don't know why they keep calling. Right. Sorry about that, Jürgen, mate. Let me do that. Okay. Yeah. It will save me that 30 hours plus in the future because I don't have to keep coming back to teach him, hey, you're not doing it in this way. So an example is I said when you're facilitating online, one of the things you weren't doing that much is you're not doing tag questions. You're not engaging them going, does this make sense? How does this sound to you? Is this exciting? Right? That type of stuff. It's just,
Hmm.
he just went bang, 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 question, 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 question. It was like a interrogation sounds rude, right?
Yeah,
But it can feel like that, especially
yeah,
because if you're like, man, I got to make sure that this, and so, and then at the end of it, like Richard, just having this time here with you and getting this feedback from you was so much better than me even just going to get a university degree and learning this, or even trying to learn this in university, because like this is what I signed up for, right? This is what
Hmm.
I love because it's going to help me not be just better at work, but be a better human being, right?
Hmm.
And so one of the other things is like, look, I said when someone answers a question, right? Or sorry, when someone asks a question, what I noticed was you didn't answer the question directly. You kind of like went around the long way, right? And I said a technique I want to share with you, and this is what I think is pretty cool that for your fans and audience here is I say you got to flip it, right? Most people, hey Jürgen, good question, right? Let's say your question like, hey Richard, have you done this before? And my answer is no, right? In my head, I've never
Hmm.
used whatever tool you're talking about. Instead of going no, Jurgen, right? Or some people are like, well, Jurgen, I haven't used, I kind of done this, kind of done that. It's kind of like, they dodge around it, right? Beat around
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bush, as we call it in Australia. And the idea is they want to give context, but context goes, it's a whole paragraph of context. And then the answer is no, right? Well, for you, you're sitting there going, is that a yes? Is that a no? I'm confused. What's happening?
Hmm.
Right? And so I go flip it, give them the answer first, and then say, is it okay to explain context? Right? So let's say you're like, Richard, have you used this tool before because it's important if you're going to try and automate, business? And I'll be like, Jürgen, look, I haven't used that tool before. In saying that, I had a quick Google, mate. I looked around, I looked at it. It looks like a basic CRM, like most other CRMs. We've used a lot of other CRMs, like HubSpot, this, Active Campaign, whatever. And I don't imagine it to be too hard. Would you say, Jürgen, that that's correct, right, with your use of your CRM? And most clients are like, yeah, that's probably right. You can pick it up and learn it. And so yeah, for us, it's not about just purely about how we use it. We'll ask you how you use it, but we'll also look at automations to help trigger things from that you probably never thought about. So that's how we can work together. Even though I've never used your tool before, it wouldn't take us that long to pick it up. And
Hmm.
those types of things is like what I'm spending time on, in there. So it's not just about building the process, building the automations. Part of it is, but for most people, like this is the thing I noticed as well when they get a VA, right? They're just like, they don't want to spend time with their VA to coach them up. They're like, just do this, right?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
can it take you 5 minutes, right? When it took me a minute, right, to do that normally. And
Hmm.
it's like, they're not willing to invest that time upfront now to to build that person's skill up and get them to even think and make the same decision as you would, right? Which doesn't happen overnight. You can't teach someone how to
No, that's
I
right.
can't
Yeah.
teach you my
I
principles
think,
immediately.
yeah, I think that's, you've hit on a couple of really important points there in terms of going back to building a business that runs itself through bringing on other people, whether that's
Mm,
virtual assistants or staff or whoever. It's, first of all, you need to have a good onboarding system. So you talked earlier about, what are the expectations that you have of them, making that clear right up front in the onboarding, then having good training systems in place. And that's where I think systems and processes can add huge value because they can be the basis for the training. And then the third one that you've just described in great detail there, which is fantastic, is taking the time to actually then coach them. So
mm,
a lot of people I see have so onboarding and the expectations are not clear. Many of them have some basic training and some basic processes in place, but they're kind of what I mentioned earlier about they've written them up and they say somebody else, you have to do it this way, rather than, well, this is how I've done them. Can you take a look at that and come back and suggest to me how you might approach this? And then let's talk about further from there and improve them. And the third thing you talked about there is the coaching part, which I see most people not doing. And I think that's where it breaks down. I think the expectation is people say, okay, I'm going to hire a virtual assistant. All right, there's all the stuff that I don't want to do. And now I'm free.
Yeah.
and then, 6 weeks later or 4 weeks later or whatever it might be, they say, this isn't working out, just isn't working out.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to a lack of patience, right? To spend that time. They're like, I hired you. How do you not know how to email back to this client, right? It's not about, then they focus about the task, right? But it's about the decision making of like, how do I email back this client who's requesting a question? Because one, I'm still learning the business. Two, I'm still learning about you, right? The business owner. Three, I'm still learning about what we're selling and how we help people, And so the thing I tell a lot of our clients is, if you want real-time freedom back, you want to steal back your time, right? The idea is you need to stop focusing on tasks and start delegating these decisions. That's the real trap here, right, Jürgen, is most people are not delegating enough decisions to their team, to go do, and that's what keeps them trapped, because the team keeps coming back. Jürgen, what do I do here? Jürgen, what do I do there? This happened, Jürgen. Holy crap, what do I do? Right? And then, you as an entrepreneur is like, bang, do this, bang, do that. We're going to do this, that, bah, 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 like cowboy style, really fast, get it done, just do that. But then it teaches your team, hey, Jürgen's going to us problem solver. And that's not going to be how you get free, right? It's good ego boost because you're like, how awesome am I? My team always needs me, and I answer stuff and I put these awesome solutions in place. I'm creative, but it's then moving past your ego to be like, why do I need to do that? Why can't I get my team and allow them an opportunity to step in? And the first opportunity is going to be scary for them. They're like, why is Jürgen making me take this accountability and responsibility? And it's just, from there, it's about then create that safe space to be like, it's okay if you fail, because I'm not giving you $1 million to go decide on something. I'm just saying, what would you want to do with this client's issue? And it's like, if it's right, cool, go do it. Right? If they're completely off track, then you want to guide them back with like coaching style, like, hey, cool, good idea. Would it be helpful if I explained, my thoughts? And they're going to be always, yeah, of course. You're going to say, this is why I would do it. This is why I do this. Da, 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 da. So, example, if we go back to that, the question, right, where people ask a question and then, most people don't answer directly. I flip it. I go, answer you, and then I give context. And I said, the reason why I do that is most people have a short attention span. Yeah. They're not going to sit there for 2 minutes to listen to you, give context, which most people will interpret as an excuse, right? And then you give your answer. And that's why we flip it early, give them the answer first, and then they listen to you, right? And you're not wasting their time, you're respecting them. And then you go, is it okay if I explain how we kind of got here? Yeah. You can do that, or you go straight into, no, sorry, we don't do this, da, 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 right? And that little shift, my team was like, man, no wonder my fiance gets mad, angry at me all the time, right? Because she's like, ask me a question, and it just takes for she just feel like, just answer the question, don't give me the runaround, right?
Yeah,
It's like, maybe I should try that, right? Like, yeah, man, like this is really important. So then people understand that you're respecting their question, you're not fluffing about, you're direct, but you're giving that context, and so you're both happy, right? On that end. So so it's important to show them what to do, but explaining is the part when you explain it of how and the reason and your thinking behind it is then how we impart the principles into the team.
Yeah, I love that, and I think it's particularly important the whole idea of reframing our approach to all of our staff that we bring on board to empower them to make decisions rather than, okay, here's the tasks you've got to do, and have any problems, come and talk to me. Rather than that, take the approach of, here's the key decisions that I expect you to be able to make. And
Mm-hmm.
if you need help with those decisions, we'll go through a training program. We'll do regular coaching. We'll have regular feedback sessions. If you need any help in between that, sure, come and talk to me. But here's the key decisions that I need you to make. And yeah, if you're comfortable deciding this is what we're going to do in this situation, keep me briefed in our regular briefings, but you don't need to wait for me to take action.
Mm. Yeah, and then like as a team member, the thing that they want most is to know that they're going to be supported no matter what.
Mm.
And that as a business owner can be very scary because you're like, what if they lose the client, right? But like, I'm sure my team have that feeling like, but Richard, what happens if we lose this client? And I'll be like, that's okay. There'll be another one. You know, if this client doesn't agree with our policies and what we want to do, that's okay. They're not a good fit. We can say goodbye,
Mm.
on that end. Obviously, with your startup and you're like, oh man, scraping by month to month is hard. Yeah, on that end. At that same time, like as you get bigger, you'll have those opportunities, and your team will observe how you make decisions on that end, how you operate, and then they'll help them determine whether it's a safe environment here at work or not, right? So
Mm.
if you're like ruthless with this client, you're like, nah, I don't care, we're gonna keep them and squeeze them and for their money or whatever, then they'll know, be like, I don't know if this is the thing that makes sense with me. And one of the things I try and make sure is we have this policy of no naked questions, meaning, Jürgen, you come to me, you're like, hey, Richard, I got this problem. Like, cool, Jürgen, so tell me, da 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 da. All right, so what do you want to do? And if you go, I don't know, right, then I'll be like, so then, Jürgen, I need you to go back, go Google, go YouTube, have a think about it for half an hour. I need you to tell me what you think you want to do.
Mm.
Yeah, you have to come with a plan here for me. You can't come naked and go, hey, I don't know what to do. It's go research, go think about it, and then if you were in my position, what would you do? And then run through scenario A, B, and C with me. And if that's what you need guidance on which one to pick, I'm fine to help guide you on that. And I'll be like, I'll still go, Jürgen, which one do you think is the right thing to do? And even
Mm.
though you give me 3 scenarios, you might be like, oh, I think scenario B is good. And then as a leader, what you want to do is not push down your ideas yet. I call me manipulative, right? What I try and do is I want to understand, Jürgen, how did you think scenario B was the best option, right? Because only through me understanding how you think, then can I mold you better to make the decisions like how we want it to be for the company,
Mm.
right? And so only by understanding you, you're like, oh, I like scenario B because it's color yellow, da da da. And then I'm like, hey, awesome, Jürgen, that's great. Can I add feedback for you? And you're like, yes. Like, cool. So the reason why I don't think scenario B works is because our brand colors are not yellow, right? That's why we maybe have to run with scenario C, which is this, 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 this. And then that's me imparting now to you. You're like, oh, okay. Even though yellow's bright and stands out, it doesn't match our brand color. So that's why this is how we have to make decisions in the future. And
Mm.
that's what we want to do here is understand first and then help mold them through like sharing your own decision making principles there and explain how we come to that. And the only way you know that if they learn is, there'll be another scenario that comes down
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
similar and see if they apply that,
Yeah.
right?
Apply
And
the
if they
feedback.
don't and
Yeah.
they repeatedly don't apply, then this person's not paying attention on that.
Yeah. 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 There's so much to love in that. There's the idea by by sending people away with what you're calling naked questions is you're essentially training them in this is the first step in the decision making. Come back to
Mm,
me with some ideas as to how you'd
mm,
answer the question, how you deal with this situation, and
mm,
then providing the feedback. Of course, I mean you can say manipulation, but that's where it's feedback, coaching, and training at that point because they've given you something to work with, and you
mm,
say, "That's great. You can improve that by doing this." Or there's some flaws in this. So if you remove that bit and add this bit, then it's probably going to work out really well. So
mm,
that's kind of they've given you the context, if you like, what you talked about context before. They've given you the context to build on and allow themselves to be coachable. The other thing that occurred to me is
yeah.
often I mean, I have questions in my mind. How do I approach something? And by having a conversation with somebody else, they don't they don't have to give me the answers. They just have to listen and say, "Oh, okay, tell me more about that. Oh, why are you doing it that way? I
Hmm.
don't understand. What are you doing there?" And by having that conversation, often I come up with the answer myself. So
Correct.
yeah, so that usually we have the answer. It's just unconscious somewhere, and by having a conversation and by somebody asking a few pertinent questions, it kind of comes out, right?
Yeah, I truly believe everyone knows the answer deep down inside,
Mm,
and it's just having that person who's willing to believe in you that it's in there and asking you the right questions to get in there. Otherwise, to help guide you. So, like, there was an example once where a client of ours, so they had a virtual assistant, and there was some miscommunication where the virtual assistant said, I spoke to OA about my time shifts and that they were okay with it. But then the client came to us going, why are you telling my VA what times they should be working when you don't know how we work? I'm like,
mm,
we would never do that. Right. And so we had to have a three-way facilitated call. And, that situation popped up, and the VA, was respectful. She said, look, it's my fault for the misunderstanding. I'm really sorry about that, blah blah blah. And we're all like, okay, cool. And for me, I'm like, and this is a very important part about leadership, right? It's like, if someone does something, makes a mistake or fails at something, I don't mind it, right? Sorry is nice, but I'm not here for sorry. I want to know, what are we going to put in place so this doesn't happen
mm,
again, you know?
mm.
And so this VA was like, hey, I'm really sorry, it won't happen again, right? I'm like, this is a sweep under the carpet moment. And I'm like, I give the opportunity to see if the client wants to say anything. They didn't. So I jumped in. I go, hey, that's great. I appreciate that you're sorry about this. But VA, what's the learning? What's the thing? What's the action you're going to apply so to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And then she's thinking about it. She goes, I'm just going to be more open, Jurgen. I'm just going to be more open. And you have that smile on your face, right, Jurgen? Because you're like, that's not an action, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's vague. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that's not good enough. I want to see if the client says that that's good enough or not. They don't really do anything. I go, hey, look, great, thank you for trying, right? But we need something more tangible, something that we know that you can put in place, that you can do, right? An action. Yeah. And then she's like, look, I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to try to be more honest, right? So she's getting flustered right now,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I go, look, try again, right? Basically, I say, try again in a nice way. And she's like, I'm just going to communicate more, right? And I'm like, what does communicate more look like in your
Mm,
mind? Just so that we have an understanding of what exact step you would do if you felt that. And then in this moment, after asking like three times, she broke down. She turned off her camera. She's crying, right? And the client and me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm like, cool. All right, so you did great trying here now, but VA, right? So can I help you? Because she's stuck and she's just feeling really terrible. Looks like she's an idiot in front of the client because I'm asking questions. And I go, okay, so what you were saying was very vague. The thing I'm looking for is something like, so the way this scenario broke down was because you messaged the client, it got misinterpreted, right? If it's something very important, like this situation, wouldn't I would suggest for you to say, hey, client, is it okay for us to have a quick chat about this particular matter, right? Video chat, so that we can discuss it. Yeah. Would that be an effective action versus, this is the message, I spoke to OA about this, and then it's open for interpretation,
mm.
right? And I said, that's the type of thing that I'm looking for here when I say, let's put an action in place. Instead of you saying, I'll just send a message to the client, it's, I'm going to request for a meeting with the client so that we can discuss this important matter relating to whatever is important to me, right? I
Mm.
said, this is not just about your work shift here, it's about anything that you deem important. And the client will always make time for that. And then the
Yeah,
client chimed in and is like, look, I agree with what Richard said. This is really good because, this is what we want to do. We want to hear your feedback too. So it's not like, we're a black, void or anything like that. It's, we want to hear from you. So we're happy to take that time here to talk to you. And so, yeah, it's those types of things we want to do, is get very specific, on that end there, so that
mm.
this is what this person is going to do to avoid repeating the same mistake again. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the most important things here.
Yeah, it's a great example of being really specific. And I was sort of, as you're going through the scenario, and providing the answers that the person provided, the question in my mind, the follow up question was always, well, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's always,
yeah,
you should have seen it, Jurgen. There's so many times when I was get frustrated myself, like, how else do I say I need action, or
yeah, yeah,
what does that look like, right? There's only so many ways I can reword it in a
yeah,
nicer way, right? On that end.
yeah.
And so, yeah,
All
it's
right,
just a
yeah.
big practice.
Great. Well, on that note, I think it's a good point now to move on to the buzz, which is our innovation round. We've had a really couple of really good examples of kind of being really specific in conversations. Now, in the buzz, the idea is it's the same 5 questions I ask of every guest, by the way.
Mhm.
The idea is you'll give us some really insightful answers and some really snappy, concrete answers for our listener today to go and do something awesome as a result. Take some action.
Sure, sure, sounds good.
All right. What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Etch out reflective time for yourself and your team.
I love it. What does that look like?
So that intentionally, meaning build the systems, build the processes in place so that you're not running around being busy, right? In
Mm,
busyness all the time. It's about trying to stay like clear with this is how we approach a problem, this is how we approach any issues. And so that it's just a repeated process. And that creates freedom so that you're not running around recreating the wheel every time. And in that space, where maybe it's half an hour, maybe it's 20 minutes in a day or whatever it is for you or your team to relax, to recuperate, and to then just let your mind wander and think about things
mm.
in the business of like, what if I do it like that? If you're busy all the time, you're just going to get stuck being
Yeah,
busy.
it's just
You don't get that
treading
time
on the
to
hamster wheel.
yeah, you don't
Yeah,
get that time to look over and go, how come that water container only gives like one drop of water? What if we opened it up more? Whatever, right?
yeah,
That type of
Excellent. I love it. All right. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
best thing I have done to develop new ideas. I think the best thing I have done to develop new ideas is most of the time not even being me that has to develop those new ideas. It's leveraging and I think creating that space a lot for my team.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs hinge it on themselves to create that strategy, to create that plan, to have that idea that comes from them. But I've worked a lot here with in Outsourcing Angel to make it so that I create that time for the team. They can feed it back in, and it's us to have that discussion together, so that it's not a CEO or the founders innovative idea. It is the team's innovative idea stemming from one person who says one thing, then another person goes, "What if we added that on top? Or what if we took this out and did this?" And
Hmm.
then that's I think the magical part there is having that whole team collaboration in there. And the only way you can do that is by not shoving your team with lots of tasks all the time. It's
Yeah.
also my job, I think, is to create that, make their jobs easier. You know, not just the CEO's life easier, right? It's make their jobs easier because then they will want to stay in. They want to give more. They want to contribute more to make the company better.
Hmm.
That's my
Yeah.
vision anyway.
Yeah. I love that. Leveraging other people. And it comes back to what you were saying earlier, right? In empowering people to make decisions and training them how to make decisions consistent with the philosophy and the culture of the company.
Mm,
So yeah, this comes back to tapping into that valuable resource for ideas and helping. And
100%.
yeah, great. All right. What's a favorite resource you use most often?
Favorite resource, like a book kind of thing, or like,
Could be anything. Could be a book, could be a training program, could be software, could be people.
yeah, yeah. I think a favorite resource of mine, I would say it's pretty random. So, on like Android phones, when you swipe to the left side, you have that Google, I think they call it Google Now or something like that, where it's like articles based off stuff that you've read recently in your interests. Like, some of the things I've found on there are very like super interesting. I think it's untapped
All
resource, to
right.
be honest, versus like, your Facebook feed, your
Yeah,
Instagram
yeah.
feed, or your YouTube feed, right? Like sometimes I just flick over there just to see like what articles are there, and sometimes it shares some interesting things of like similar apps or hacks and tips and tricks and all of that,
Hmm.
or news updates sometimes that I don't always get across to. Is, some of those little nuggets pop up in there for me, right?
Hmm.
Of new tools, or like this new thing rolling out, this tool that I'm using, and I think that's a hidden gem that most people probably don't use as
Okay.
much.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to have to go back and check it out as well. I just sort of, I probably don't use it enough. Excellent. So Google now. All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track? I mean, I think we've sort of talked quite a bit about this one, or client or a
Uh,
staff member. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think, and this is very interesting because recently we had to let go of someone, and when I came in to look after their projects, it was all a mess, and the team was all in disarray. They were confused on what to do too, and I think a lot of our jobs as leaders is to just keep our team focused, right? Team or client focused, and this helps if you're a coach as well. Is like you just want that person to understand very clearly, this is what I need you to go focus on.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, don't worry about anything else, right? It's do this, 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 this. This goes down to like, yes, the task management level side of things as well. But at that same time, I'm not telling him exactly how to do the task. I'm just
Yeah.
like, priority, this one, then this one, then this one. Because most people I find, they're not capable of prioritizing for themselves, and they can get very easily distracted, right, on that end. And so I'm always like, just keep everyone focused. Even my founder, Lynn, right, is like, I want you, Lynn, to just look at this. I think we just focus on this, and this is what we do for the company. Even though we can do this thing and that thing and that thing and that thing too,
Hmm.
just let's focus on this thing that's going to be the most impactful thing that's going to change the business, our company, our lives, your life, that type of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it. You touched on one thing there that I think is particularly important, and that's kind of looking at the impact of this. So we're focusing on this because, and you're giving the reason, and I guess coming back to the reason behind it, and that, of course, linking into the overall strategy of the business or the mission of the
Mm.
person or the business itself, is a really powerful way to help people. Okay, this is why we're focused on this. Don't forget, we have to be focused on this. Hmm.
Yes, yes.
All right. And last question of the buzz round. What's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Oh, that's a really tough one, eh? I think of this like as part of like for myself as well, right, Jurgen, is I think if you want to differentiate yourself, you have to go back into your core and really understand what makes you a genius, right? I believe inside everyone's a genius, meaning you're not that you're the smartest, but you're a genius at something, right? Like some
Hmm.
people are genius at, like sculpting clay. Other people are geniuses at, math problems or whatever. And it's trying to find that key, I guess, area, task, focus that you're just really, really good at versus a lot of other people. You don't have to be world number one at it, right? But even if you're, top 10% in the world of it, you're pretty good at it. And so, like, for me, like, I think I spend a lot of my time trying to figure that out, thinking, and, you'll find if you go on this journey for yourself is you'll subscribe to these dreams, or you think you're a genius at something that you're not because you were sold a dream. So example, right?
Hmm.
My journey is like corporate career, thought I wanted to be a partner at KPMG, right? Realized that's not me, right? So I got bought into this corporate dream, realized it's not me. Then I went down the whole personal development front, and then I got sold this dream of you got to be on the stage, Richard. You got to go, help people's lives, just like what we do, right? Like Tony Robbins. And I bought into this whole dream, Jurgen, of like I got to be Asian Tony Robbins, right? Let her clap on the stage and stuff like that, like Tony, and like that's what I'm here to do. And I realized I thought I was a genius in that, but what turned out to be is maybe I was just great at being, that leader type, right? That founder type. And what I delved into more is what if my real genius is helping other people shine brighter, than they could before. Just like what you're doing here, right? This show is not about you; it's about your guests, and you're
Mm,
trying to make them look and perform better than they ever could. And that's what happened to me. I'm like, what if that's me? Right? What if that's me in a business where I'm not meant to be number one? Maybe I'm meant to be number two or number 10 or number 15, right? And I support a cause or a vision or a mission that makes sense for me. And that's how I kind of found myself more. And that's where then you can see me blossom more here, right? I'm like, if you did this like podcast like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right, Jurgen, it'd be different because I'm like, posturing and I'm like, yeah, I'm Asian Tony Robbins, right? And all that stuff. But now it's just, for me, it's just a lot of uniqueness here. I think for me, just being centered and knowing what I'm really good at and not letting people say, "Oh, you're crap at building systems, Richard." Sometimes I'm not the world's best man, but I'm pretty good at it. And this is what we can do. And it's just believing and finding your real value and centering around that.
yeah, and there's a lot of self-reflection goes into discovering that, right? So it comes back to
Yeah.
what you were saying earlier about allowing the team time to self-reflect as well. So we need to allow ourselves time. And I love
Mm.
that you kind of shared with us your journey a little bit there in that answer, because I think we're all unique and everyone has genius to contribute to the world. It's just, first of all, finding what that is and knowing what that is. And then secondly, having the courage to actually do it.
Mm.
Some people
Mm.
kind of, and finding it is sometimes is a bit of a challenge, because I often find some things that I do that I've taken so much for granted. And it takes somebody else looking over my shoulder saying, "Oh, that's amazing what you just did." And I say, "What? I don't even
Yeah.
know what I just did." And so recognizing that and then having the courage to share that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's exactly how I found out mine, Jurgen. It's literally other people coming up to me like, "Hey, can you do that for us?" Like, what do you mean? Like, it's so easy, guys. Just do this. And like,
yeah,
I don't understand what you're talking about, Richard. Just do it for us. I'm like, man, how do you not understand? Like, and that's how it started for me.
mm,
It's stumbling across those times where people are reaching out to you like, "Can you do this? Hey, what is that? That's really good. Hey, show me how to do this." Right?
mm,
It's that expertise that
yeah,
just naturally comes to you. And that's, if that's happening quite often, I say, draw the lines, draw the connections, and see what happens.
excellent. Great. Well, thanks for getting us through the buzz round. This has been absolutely fabulous conversation, Richard. Thanks. Now, where can people find out more about you and the work you do, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you've shared today?
Thanks for having me on, Jurgen. So the best place to probably reach me is LinkedIn, right? So it's probably just look up my name. It's just Richard Phu on that end there. Otherwise, you can always head over to the Outsourcing Angel website as well, right? Where we can find what we do here at Outsourcing Angel.
Excellent. And of course, we'll have links in the show notes for those two URLs that you can click straight through as well. All right, Richard. Now, what action would you like our listener to take out of today's conversation?
If they're not brain fried already, Jurgen, I'd say this, right? I'd say the thing for any listener here, depending on where you're at in your business journey at this time, I'd say think about how can you start creating that time freedom, if that's what you want, with yourself and your team more now. So whether that is you got to etch out your Friday afternoon and say, "No, I'm not working on that time," or
Hmm.
whether that means, "Hey, maybe I should schedule in a monthly, not a performance management chat, but a chat with my team to just connect with them more, understand who they are, and try and get feedback from them. How can I make their job easier?"
Hmm.
Right? It's thinking about how do you create a neat life for yourself and your team, if you have a team around that, so that then that can help you and your business grow more down in the future.
Excellent. And yeah, it's some of that is invest some time to save time later.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us so generously today, Richard. I've really enjoyed our conversation. There's been lots of really valuable tips in there that I think everybody can apply, both in their business and even in their life. And I'm looking forward to hearing back from how people are implementing the call to action. So thanks again, and please do stay in touch.
Thank you, Jürgen.